Hello and welcome to DPN TV here at the DPN car collection. We're sitting inside our Rover 45 1.8 Connoisseur. I thought I'd take a seat in this car to do a little talk about what we are doing concerning ethanol in the fuel. What we wanted to do is see how it went and whether it was a problem for us in the way we're going to tackle it. Before I did this video, I thought it might be of interest to you. Of course, most of the engines we're running are the K series. That's in all our 45s, the 1.8 in our 275s. The only A series engines we've got are in the MG and our Mini, which are currently off-road at the moment, so we're not using them. So most of what we're talking about is regarding us using it in the K series engines. Firstly, we're not overly worried about it. Of course, it started off as E5 and then become E10. I think it's when it became E10 everybody sort of started to get worried about it, or worried about the effects of it. The reason we're not really worried about our K series engines is, although on many of the videos that I've watched and the bits of research I've done, the K series engine is a fairly modern engine, and if it's running the injection, which most of the ones, I suppose, perhaps from mid-90s right through to the end, probably did, although I know there were still carburetors on some of the small K series engines, because their injection, I don't see it really being a big issue. And actually, as far as we understand from the research we've done, and I would say, it's only basic research we've done, and obviously our own sort of opinion, experience and common sense. So if you are considering whether to use the ethanol petrol, the E10 in your car, I'd certainly recommend doing lots of research and not just going by this video, because it's obviously early days in the whole scheme of things with us. As I said, if we get back to the reasons, mainly the first one is the K series is a fairly modern engine, and although the government site doesn't cover Rover cars, it does cover Land Rover stuff, and some of the Land Rover stuff use the K series engine. Again, I wouldn't fully go by a government website, because I think really they're only interested in modern cars, and they just tell you that's fine anyway. So I think you sort of need to do your own research, especially as cars get older, because I think a lot of manufacturers will just say, well, it doesn't work with that car, just to cover themselves basically. As far as we understand, the main problem is obviously if the fuel's not regularly being used, it can separate and you get water on the bottom of the fuel, so you potentially could get your pump suck straight water up, and also the petrol can sort of damage rubber pipes, and also especially with carburetors, it can sort of goo things up a little bit, and we've certainly seen that happen because other countries have been using ethanol for a long time. I think one of the videos I often watch is Musty One, when he's repairing his mowers and tractors, and he often comments how the ethanol has sort of stained and gooed up the carburetor. And again, that's where the effects seem to be more with lawn mowers and little petrol engines. One, they're not used through the winter so much, and secondly, they're carburetor. So there some of the problems. Now, our cars aren't always being used on a daily basis, and we think pretty much if you were using ethanol fuel on a daily basis, you're not going to really have big problems, certainly in the short term, possibly even the long term. It comes when the car's perhaps sat around for well, some say as little as sort of 3 or 4 weeks, could be less. So regular use, you're not going to have the worries. I would say ours are used medium use rather than regular use. So that's one of the reasons, which is what we're going to get onto, is to what we are doing. to I suppose really make ourselves feel a little bit more happy. As I say, realistically, I think you'd probably be all right using it, and it is more the long-term effects that you have to worry about, and the car's getting gummed up. As I said, I think the K series engine isn't really a problem, but in reality, any car engine, no matter how old it is, will run on ethanol. Petrol, certainly the E10. As we say, it's just what sort of long-term effects will be there, and obviously how much they will get gummed up in. So what we decided to do is use the E10. One reason is that the E10 is RON 95, which is what these were designed to work on as far as we're concerned. That's what they were sort of probably tested on and based on. And you can buy the higher octane, I think, is it 97 octane? That's supposed to be an E5, or possibly might not have any ethanol in it, but that's a lot dearer. And the RON has been up, which we'd rather stick to RON 95 in our petrol. We also don't see the point in paying slightly more for a petrol that in some cases possibly could still have ethanol in it, possibly even the same amount, because I think they're very careful. They say sort of up to E10 or up to E5. So you could be paying all that extra and there's still ethanol in that petrol. So why pay the extra? That's firstly one of the main reasons that we've decided not to use it. Then when we were doing the research, we did find that you could get the ethanol out of petrol. We see a few videos online, I've no doubt it works, where you add a certain amount of water into a petrol can, shake it all up, let it settle. When the petrol settles and separates, the ethanol sticks to the water, and then what you can do is drain off the bottom water out of that tank. You need a tap in sort of a tank to do it. One reason we decided not to go down that route is practicability. To actually do that every time you wanted petrol, it means you'd be doing small amounts. You'd have to put that water in, let it settle, and then drain out the water ethanol mix. Another problem with that is petrol's quite dear. I mean, I think at the time of making this video, if you buy £5 worth of petrol, the most you're going to get is 4 litres, possibly even less. So if you then remove the ethanol out of that, you're getting even less petrol. And most people say if you're removing the ethanol, you then need to put an additive in to bring sort of the sort of octane or the burnability of that petrol back to a good standard. So that's going to be quite expensive, because you're losing some of the petrol and then you're putting an additive in on top. We're not convinced we like the idea of adding water only to remove it to get the ethanol out. As I said, no doubt it works, and maybe if you perhaps just used a car every now and then for a classic car show, or maybe you've got a lawnmower, perhaps that'd work. For us using the cars on a semi-regular basis, I would say that's just not going to be practical for us. And as I said, with the cost losses as well, we don't really see the point in that. So what we've decided to do, and as you've seen in shot as I've been talking, is buying a sort of an additive, which is a fuel stabilizer, stops the fuel separating and stops the ethanol damaging the petrol. As I said, some people may say, well, you know, it's sort of putting in almost a placebo, which it could be, but the chances are it does something, and it's certainly not doing any harm. We've now been using it for a fair time. What we started off with using is this ethanol shield. We were quite happy with that, and what that's supposed to do, as we say, is it stabilizes the fuel so it doesn't separate, which again, you know, if the car does go perhaps 2 weeks, especially over the winter period, or a month for some reason, sometimes we're working on our cars, we take them off the road and it might be 2 months while we work on one of them. We don't want that fuel separating and the ethanol separating in that fuel. So that's one reason we decided to use it. Also, most of these suggest that they help with protecting the rubber fuel lines, which you should be sort of checking anyway as regular maintenance, but it doesn't hurt to have something in them. And they often also say that they stop water getting into the oil of the engine. Now, in tests, one of the bit of research I did, sort of long-term usage of sort of E10 or ethanol in your fuel is that your engine oil can get a slightly higher content of water. Now, if you're changing your oil regularly, which you probably should be doing, we don't think that's much of an issue, and we add sort of like a Lucas oil into our engine oil anyway, which should help for protection. So, not really a big worry for us, but if it's supposedly going to help with that, we're not too worried about it. What we've got on to using more recently is the Lucas one you got more in the bottle, and we're happy to sort of use the fuel additives. That was a smaller bottle, and really that was our test. I say we would have carried on with it, but they didn't seem to do bigger bottles, and it wasn't so available online as the Lucas one. We quite like Lucas products, although we'd never get too attached to a brand. If something offers something better or cheaper but does the same sort of stuff, then we'd be more than happy to do it. And this treatment actually does E10, E15 and E85. So for E10, hopefully it's more than up to the job. It's a bit like the additive in our minds that you used with lead replacement petrol. When we had our Metros and they finally did away with the red pump or the 4-star petrol, and did away with then the lead replacement petrol, and the only thing you could buy was unleaded, we then started using an additive for that, which again, there was a lot of fuss at the time over the leaded petrol doing damage. I think what time has shown is unless you're doing really regular long mileage, it probably didn't do as much damage as people thought. But again, if you can put an additive in and it helps to protect it and it's not costing too much, then why not? So basically you've got your instructions on there, and it tells you how much of this you need to put in for how much fuel, and they've got a little scale up the side. What we did is worked out how much we use. I mean, we tend to really probably only put about £5 or £10 in of petrol at a time. So really, we're not using a big amount of this. And this bottle lasted us, well, since they started doing E10, which was sort of the end of August, September, that lasted us up to about a month ago. And then we started using this one. What we do is work out a measurement and put it in. And what we've got is a little syringe that you can buy. You can get them on eBay, I think. We've put our own little marker on it. We put a couple of marks you can't really see, but you can see one mark there, possibly a second one. We sort of syringe a little bit out and add it to the fuel. That allows you either to put it in a can or to sort of squirt it into the neck, because these cars have got a little flap, I think, that was designed to stop any dirt getting in, but also to make sure in the leaded and unleaded days you put a leaded pump into the car, so you can push that past the flap, squirt it in, or get it easily into a fuel can. So that's basically what we're doing. As I said, we didn't want to do this video until we tried it for a while. Firstly, we've seen no real differences. We've certainly not really seen any difference in economy. I mean, we're not really a big measure of economy. I think if you're doing a regular one, perhaps 6 days a week, it might become more of an issue, and you might be more interested in the economy of a car. Then really we just sort of drive the cars steadily, look after them, and they give us fairly good economy. We certainly not noticed that the fuel's going down any quicker. Some people say E10 has made it worse for economy. Some people say it's better. I would say it's similar, possibly slightly better, but certainly nothing noticeable with the mileage we're doing. And adding this certainly hasn't made any difference. We've also took 2 of our cars for MOTs, and there was no difference in emissions. So we know that the E10 isn't going to affect the emissions, which it shouldn't have done anyway. Supposedly it makes it better emissions, and we wanted to be sure that these additives weren't going to make any difference to emissions on an MOT, and it wasn't going to be too much difficulty doing that, which we found it's not. When we buy petrol, we just put a little bit of the additive in the tank, and as I said, then hopefully it's protecting against those things that ethanol was supposed to cause, which is the fuel separating, or being more likely to separate, take on water, and then that water ends up with your tank gunging up with the lines, the carburetor, or even the injectors, because that's one of the things as well. This regularly used helps to keep your injectors clean as well. What we do is then just keep it in this jug, so hopefully if there was any leakages, it's not going to leak anywhere. Keep a little plastic gloves. You use a glove when we're doing it, and we've got a little syringe to measure it out. So basically, yeah, that's the way we went. We didn't want too much hassle, so we wanted to be able to go to any petrol garage, fill up with the standard petrol and not worry about it. And then we decided to put an additive in, which, you know, as I say, essentially if you're using the car regularly, and these are a modern engine, probably not a big problem, but the additive just makes sure that if the car does sit around while we're working on it, there's not going to be any problems with the fuel separating. It stays stabilised. We shouldn't get any gunging up, and all we can do is then keep a long-term eye on things. As it goes with the A series engine in our Metro and Mini, again, we wouldn't have any problems using the E10. We'll use the additive, and as far as we're concerned, it wouldn't cause any major problems. Obviously, we haven't had to test that because those two cars have not been on the road since the E10 come out, but as we say, there's been some ethanol in the fuel for even longer. So yeah, although perhaps not much to see in this video, hopefully what I've had to say has been of interest, or perhaps a little bit of use to you. Certainly do your own research, and you've got to do what works for you and what you feel comfortable of. As I say, you know, just to reiterate, hopefully not going on too much, the main reasons we decided to take this route is, one, we didn't want to pay extra for the sort of super unleaded. We don't see the point in that, and don't necessarily think it's any better for your car. We're certainly not going to notice any performance gains from it. So that was one reason. And secondly, we didn't want any problems. We wanted to go to any garage, fill it up with the fuel that's there, and then we can deal with it by putting our own additive in. And then if the car does sit around or we're doing work on it, we shouldn't have any problems with it. As always, thank you very much for watching the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We really do appreciate you watching, liking and subscribing. As always, thank you very much for watching.